Kansas quarterback Jalon Daniels earns every bit of his injury-prone label. Why that's both a good and a bad thing.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And it's not just Jalon Daniels, some other injury concerns for the Jayhawks that could really go into Missouri's favor, really play into the Tigers' hands, I think. Also, why the protection concerns for Missouri in the passing game are every bit as much on Beau Pribula as they are on the five guys up front. I do also remind you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and the pro football season is right around the corner. So visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. And when it comes to Jalon Daniels, a lot of the talk I've heard about that quarterback is that, well, for the Jayhawks, hey, he's a heck of a talent, but he's oft injured. And you can see why he's injured just simply by watching him play in week 1 against Fresno State. The Jayhawks ask Daniels to run the football a lot, especially for a guy who is not exactly the biggest guy in the world. And to his credit, by the way, he is not afraid of contact. That's for sure. But man, buddy, get rid of the ball. Get that thing out of your hands and also take a slide on occasion. That would be my advice if I were coaching the 6th-year senior here, because there's the good and the bad side to Daniel's style of football, because while he's not afraid to take a shot in the running game or the passing game, obviously there's big upside to that. That means you can break a bigger run. That means you can give your receivers more time to hit big plays. But it also means, well, not only do you expose yourself to huge shots, well, you're exposing yourself to potential turnovers and especially sacks under this scenario as well. So I mentioned that again, the Jayhawk quarterback here, Jalon Daniels, a 6th-year senior. Really, I would call him kind of the classic NIL type of quarterback at this point because, well, in previous years, obviously, well, the 2020 season, Daniels, yes, that's why he has his 6th year here, as you might have guessed. But also in the past, this type of player would have probably at least tried his hand at pro football already. But in this case, probably more profitable, certainly in the short term, for Daniels to just, hey, play another season of college football for Kansas where, well, they aren't exactly a college football power, but as David Booth has shown us lately, there is some money swishing around the coffers of Kansas football. So I'm sure Jalon Daniels is making a pretty penny this year. And just on the football field, of course, the thing with Daniels is, of course, as you might imagine, it's going to be really important to keep him inside the pocket. But I will say this, for a smaller player, Daniels does a good job of finding spots by stepping up in the pocket and not just running, but also managing to look downfield and find receivers in the passing game. Plus, one thing that's kind of interesting, too, as I was scouting Kansas, I thought really there are a lot of aspects of the Jayhawks and Lance Leopold's offense was pretty similar to what Missouri likes to do. A heck of a lot of pre-snap motions, misdirections, screen passes being faked one way and going the other direction. But one notable difference, though, because of Daniels and his limited height and size, Kansas is literally almost never under center or even in a pistol type of formation. So that does limit what they can do a little bit in the running game, though they do a good job of, again, misdirection and running some different types of plays. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen so many faked speed options to the outside in my life where Daniels will go one way with a speed option seemingly and then sort of cut back the other way for a passing play. Now, these are the types of plays that are going to make you play a very disciplined defense, without a doubt. But at the same time, those plays I'm describing, to me, they also have the potential, if a man does whiff on his block, if a Missouri pass rusher does win, well, those plays have massive potentials to get blown up badly for huge losses and takeaways for the Tigers. So not totally unlike Arkansas, I would say. I called them, what did I call the Razorbacks last season? Oh, yeah, the high variance hogs. That's what I called them last season. Well, I think you've got kind of a similar offense with the Kansas Jayhawks. And more on Jalon Daniels, for as much as I do respect his toughness and I certainly respect his talent, I do think maybe Missouri fans have gone a little overboard with it, and maybe the nation at large, because when you look at Jalon Daniels, his best season, well, that was all the way back in 2022 at this point, where he had 230 pass attempts, 18 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Those are definitely impressive numbers. But in 2023, again, 230 pass attempts, just 75 the next year. Obviously a big injury season for Kansas and Jalon Daniels. But for all the talk of injury problems last season, well, that actually was the career high in passing attempts for Daniels, was the previous season of 2024. 300 pass attempts, 14 touchdowns, but 12 interceptions last season. That is less than ideal, and I'll just say this, 2022, that is a long time ago now, and Jalon Daniels, that's probably not the last time I'll make that mistake this week. But Jalon Daniels last season was just okay, really. I mean, when you look at his just raw numbers, it certainly was not the best season he's had of his career. 12 interceptions, that's a few too many interceptions in a 12-game college season, in my opinion. Also, his lowest passer rating of his career other than that 2020 freshman season. So is this a player trending up or a player trending down? It certainly seems more the other way, and you factor in the injuries as well. Listen, I think Daniels is a good player, and again, respect the talent, respect the toughness in particular of Jalon Daniels, but at the same time, let's not make him into Jaden Daniels either. And if you're listening to this on a Tuesday morning, later today, number one, well, we're going to get the top 25 out. I think there's a decent chance Missouri gets in at least one of those polls, more likely the coaches poll at this point, probably not the AP. That seems too far for Missouri to climb at this point. Though I will point out S&P Plus, Missouri up to 16th in the country, notably Kansas up to 25th as well. I'm seeing 6 points right now, the spread over at FanDuel Sportsbook, by the way. And speaking of Kansas, of course, got more to talk about the Jayhawks here in a little bit, including some big injuries on the Kansas defense that I think could really be an advantage for this Missouri team in particular. So let's get to that here in a bit. But when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, you got to get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. We're talking plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and when you need parts really fast, that's the best part about SupplyHouse. Their next day delivery. Talk about a game changer when time is money. And by the way, you can join the free Trade Master program today for some serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. So visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. And of course, all you guys have heard of Viagra and Cialis. But if you're looking for something that goes even faster, well, it's Rugiet. It's 3-in-1 formula, dissolves under your tongue, ready in average in about 15 minutes, and effects can last up to 36 hours. And you can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. So head to Rugiet.com FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use a promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. And once again, hit us up with the Locked On survey, by the way. Let us know how all these shows can be better. Let us know what you like, what you don't. Go to LockedOnPodcast.com/survey, and you'll get a chance to be winning one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's LockedOnPodcast.com/survey, and you can also find the link in the description of this episode of Locked On Mizzou. I'll tell you this, Kansas looking quite light in the linebacker room right now. Of course, that's one of the big strengths of Missouri's teams, not only the quality of linebackers, but the depth as well. Unfortunately for the Jayhawks, trades are not allowed in college football, and I got to think Missouri would never trade with Kansas over Norm Stewart's very much alive body at this point. But the point here is that, you know what, a really important player for Kansas here, his name for some reason is not on my notes here, so give me 1 second, hit pause, and I'll pull it up here. There we go. It's Bangally Kamara. How could I not have remembered that name? Just the John Miller of names, right? Bangally Kamara. But seriously, though, this South Carolina transfer, unfortunately for him and the Jayhawks, suffered a non-contact injury against Wagner this past week for Kansas. He had a strip sack, by the way, in the opener against Fresno, but against Wagner, went down, and it doesn't sound good. He's going to be out for a few weeks, certainly the Missouri game at the very least. And by the way, a couple other linebackers for Kansas, Joseph Sipp and Jason Gillum, have yet to play in either of the first two ball games for Kansas. So not great. That is less than ideal if you're Lance Leopold and company trying to stop what I think is going to be a really potent Missouri rushing attack. And again, for as scary as it was, obviously, watching Sam Horn go down with an injury, he gets hit in the kneecap. Looked like his foot just got caught in the ground for just long enough to do enough damage there, unfortunately. But I don't think that's going to stop Eli Drinkwitz and Kirby Moore from using Beau Pribula in the run game. Certainly enough to at least be a big enough threat to help Ahmad Hardy get a little bit more room, take one defender out of the play, that type of thing. Hopefully just unblock one defender. Certainly Pribula is good enough to occupy one man. So that'll give Ahmad Hardy an advantage at the very least, but also, hey, look for some 4th and 2, 4th and 3 type of situations. Missouri breaking in a new place kicker this week. Hey, all the more reason to be aggressive on 4th down, especially when you have a good running quarterback. As I said in my previous episode, that has not been Eli Drinkwitz's modus operandi, but these are different circumstances. He had Blake Craig last season, who was obviously, compared to Harrison Mevis, not quite the same level of reliability, but by the end of the season, Craig, who had a great leg, without a doubt. So again, if it's at the 40-yard line, the 35-yard line, that type of kicking distance causes Eli Drinkwitz to fall back into his own patterns of, hey, I'm just going to take the points here, even if obviously taking the points is not a guarantee. So regardless, the point here is that Kansas really light in the linebacker room right now. And for as much as off-ball linebackers, as they're often called these days, have been devalued in modern football, well, they still aren't without value, that's for sure. Much like running backs, especially at the college level, well, those players still matter a lot. There is no salary cap in these sports. So, again, Josiah Trotter, still a really important player that Missouri wanted to get in the portal. The same thing with the Bangally Kamara kid who from South Carolina, priority for Kansas, but unfortunately for them, fortunately for Missouri, he's going to be out of this ball game, and frankly, I don't know whose Kansas is going to be starting if linebacker, if the Sip and Gillum kids are out for the third consecutive week too. And speaking of Beau Pribula, Missouri's pass protection, if it's going to improve as the season goes along, and I assume that it will, just the degree, of course, is the question. Well, it's not all going to be on the offensive line. Some of it, and in fact, quite a bit of it, is going to be on Beau Pribula too, as it always is. By the way, that's one of those things that I point out every once in a while is that, in fact, the offensive line probably doesn't get enough credit for what the running back is doing, but they probably get too much blame for quarterback sacks in particular because, well, pressures in general are on the offensive line, but sacks are another thing. And here's what I mean, because I thought, obviously there's a circumstance in the Central Arkansas game where, for example, Caden Green was basically burnt on the inside and gave up a free shot to Beau Pribula. That's the kind of thing that can happen, and that's definitely on Green. There's nothing that Pribula can do about that. But at times there were just a few too many free rushers, and that's some of that is on communication on the offensive line, but occasionally it may be on the quarterback to simply recognize what is happening too, because again, the ball's got to come out of your hands quickly. You've got to process things quickly. And for example, obviously occasionally Missouri is going to run an empty protection where they have 5 offensive linemen and no one else attached to the line of scrimmage, no running backs in the backfield, just a quarterback. So what occasionally happens in those circumstances is you'll get maybe a double mug type of defense, which means, hey, you got your usual 4 down linemen, but maybe you've got your 2 linebackers also on the line of scrimmage in this case, lined up usually to the 2 sides of the center and the 2 A gaps often, and often those 2 players will jump back into coverage. It's sort of a, hey, let's try to mess up the offense and their communication, that type of deal. But if those 2 linebackers come, again, along with the 4 defensive linemen, well, what do you have? You've got a 6-on-5 situation. So if you're Beau Pribula, if you're any quarterback and you see those 2 linebackers come, well, what you know is it's going to be 6-on-5 and this ball has got to come out of my hands. Again, unless, well, if your defensive coordinator's getting really tricky and he drops one of those edge rushers into coverage in the flat maybe or something like that. The point is, if none of that made any sense, the point is at times it's going to be, hey, there's going to be a free rusher coming. Your offensive line, even if you have an extra tight end, an extra running back in protection, occasionally they're going to bring one more player than what you have to block. And it's your job as a quarterback to, number 1, recognize that. Number 2, get the ball out of your hands. And number 3, if you don't have the option to get it out of your hands, if there's nowhere to throw the football, well, get rid of it maybe, or obviously make the guy miss too. And Beau Pribula certainly seemed like he could make that happen. Again, against Central Arkansas, that's always the caveat, but man, it was all him making that happen on a 32-yard rushing touchdown where he showed a lot of just natural athleticism, instincts about everything you wanted to see from a quarterback on that type of play. So good stuff from Beau Pribula, but a relatively inexperienced player that's still going to have stuff to prove, and we'll see how Missouri, Pribula, Caden Green, everyone does with getting the right protection set in what is a as important of a game as there is the entire season here against the Jayhawks. So yesterday on my live program, I tried to throw out a stat that showed why this is such a unique season of college football coming, but why it also shows that Missouri is not that unique for this season, in a good way. I'm going to give it another shot. Yes, it was a brutal snafu that I edited out of the non-live version. So good for all of you who saw me put a big old egg in the middle of my forehead on that one. So I do want to tell you about that and why. You know what? Maybe Arch Manning, we really should be worried. Yes, all that here in just a little bit. But the NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And I think my favorite thing about FanDuel is simply just the wide variety of different props and futures that you can get into. I just think they have the best on the market, to be honest with you, the widest variety. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And college football is back, and of course, I'm thrilled. But let's be honest, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the actual game. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. Well, that's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans, the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best price with no surprise fees. And you know what? That's important when the get-in price right now is $211 for Missouri and Kansas. The last thing you want to do if you decide to make the plunge there is go, oh, they're throwing $50 in fees on top of every ticket too. Nope, that is the full price, including fees. So you'll immediately know, hey, is this worth it to me or not? So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. And as I record this here on a Monday evening, TCU just mercilessly took a knee inside of the North Carolina 10-yard line to make it 48-14. Woof! Tough start to the Bill Belichick era in Chapel Hill. Remember that Michael Jordan famous screw-up quote that he had a few years ago when he said the ceiling is the roof? Well, maybe he was just looking forward. Maybe Michael was just prescient. Maybe he was just saying that the ceiling regarding Bill Belichick era, the ceiling is Ted Roof, maybe that's what he was talking about. Oh, thank you, Pat Lynch. I blatantly stole that joke from you. But you know what? Speaking of stealing things, I attempted to steal a stat from my colleague Stephen Willis yesterday during the live show, only to completely botch it. Utterly and completely botch it. So, you know what? Let's give it another shot. He said very, very nervously. But no, seriously, here's the thing. Preseason, there were 23 teams with at least a 100-1 shot to win the national championship. And of those 23 teams, 15 of them have a new starting quarterback this season. So that is essentially 65% of your contenders, if you can call them that. So really what that tells you is, to me, number one, as I've been saying all offseason, really, I think this is going to be a wild season of college football, an unpredictable season in the SEC in particular. And, well, with how Alabama has started off and how negative their fans have gotten all of a sudden, I think that's to my point, and I think this stat that so much of the big-time players in college football, like Texas, like Missouri, like Michigan, like Oklahoma, like all these teams, like Ohio State, of course, so many of these teams have new quarterbacks. Well, it's going to get a little weird out there. Some of them are going to work, and some of them aren't. And speaking of some of those quarterbacks working and some of them not working, well, I don't want to completely lose my mind and panic on Arch Manning yet. That's a really good Ohio State defense from what I could tell after 1 week. But I will say this. There is some real questions with Arch, I think. If there was not a Manning name behind him, he certainly wouldn't have had the same amount of hype. I mean, when you look at his stats from high school, all the major high schools, the best high schools that he played, all held him into the, 150-yard type range. He also skipped all of your major all-star games that those type of prospects typically go to. Did not go to the Elite 11 camp, by the way. I mean, he's kind of been shielded a little bit. So, I don't know. I'm just really curious to see how this whole thing plays out, because this whole Manning thing does have a bit of a whiff of bust to it right now. At the same time, it's been one game. I don't want to lose my mind. I'm just simply saying a lot of the faith in Arch Manning, a lot of the, put him number one for the Heisman in the offseason, that type of deal. Let's put Texas number one, that type of deal. Man, a lot of that was just based on just a massive amount of blind faith, in my humble opinion, especially in a world where nobody gets to see these guys practice either. So what are we even talking about here? But regardless, thanks for listening to me talk once again here on Locked On Mizzou. And by the way, another big moment for Locked On college football fans. Locked On and Fire TV present Locked On College Football, your ultimate college football weekly preview with experts like two-time AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson, all of our Locked On local experts as well. Catch college football kickoff every Thursday throughout the season only on Fire TV. So until next time, I'm John Miller. This has been Locked On Mizzou.